Let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. Why hasn't Trump and Joe Rogan sat down for an interview? Why has it not happened yet? I'm just like all of you. I go to the JRE comment section. I say we want Trump. I say Trump 2024. I've seen other people commenting on it as well. And I just can't figure it out. And this got to me the most because Lex Fridman was the most recent person to interview Trump, which means that, either Lex went to where Trump was or Trump was in Austin, Texas. Why hasn't this interview happened? So what I'm going to be going through right now is just a list of people who have interviewed Trump. A lot of them Joe Rogan's friends. Then we're going to go into Joe, RFK, Trump, that whole thing. Then we're going to go into Patrick Bet-David talking about the odds that Joe Rogan actually interviews Trump. And then we're going to play the infamous clip of Joe Rogan saying that he doesn't want to help Trump. Then we're going to move on to Patrick Bet-David making a plea to Joe Rogan to please be good enough to interview Trump. And he makes a really good point that I don't want you to miss. And then we're going to get into Lex Fridman because he made a plea as well to Donald Trump himself. And then we're going to just play a clip of Joe Rogan that I've never seen before, where he speaks on this exact topic, and then Trump's final thoughts on being interviewed by Joe Rogan. Let's get into it, guys. There's been a lot of people that have sat down with Trump, and I'll play a little bit of each. This is Sean Ryan from the Sean Ryan podcast. Great podcast. He interviewed Trump 12 days ago. Let's listen in.
Numbers we've ever had in terms of illegal immigrants coming into our country. And by the way, I want people to come into our country. I want people, we need it for labor for a lot of reasons, but I want them to come in legally. I don't want to take the prisoners. I don't want to take gang members. I don't want to take people that are going to be nothing but trouble. But women, I believe, like me because they feel very strongly that I'm going to give them better security with the military, with the borders, with the police. I have the endorsement of almost every major police group in the United States right now.
I have one last question. I think that one of the biggest problems within the country is the distrust in the United States government. I'm one of them. I have zero trust in any government agencies. I have zero trust in our Congress and our Senate, anything. We have a government that's not functioning right now.
Yeah.
How are you going to gain the trust back of the American people within the government? And are we going to see anybody held accountable?
Yeah. The answer is yes on the second. They're going to be held accountable. They've got to be held accountable. What they're doing, they're destroying this country. They're crooked people. They're dishonest people. They're going to be held accountable. But what I find is, so when I came to Washington, I won an election that everybody said, they thought I was just going to have some fun. Everyone said, he's got too good a life. I did. I had the greatest life. I went from that to having bullets shot at me, okay? I had the greatest life. And they said, would you do it again? I said, without question, because we're going to save the country. It's much more important than I had a good life. A lot of people have a good life. It's like not the same thing. We're going to make America great again. Literally, we're going to make America greater than ever before. If we don't do it this time, we'll never be able to do it. It'll be too late. It'll be too far gone. But we're going to have great people. When I came in originally, I didn't know anybody in Washington. I was only there 17 times. You may have heard me say this. I never stayed over. I built a hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue, which was a great hotel and very successful, and then sold it. And then what happened is I didn't really know anybody in Washington. I was a New York person. I wasn't like a Washington, D.C. person. And all of a sudden I'm president and I'm driving down Pennsylvania Avenue with more police and motorcycles and military than I've ever seen before in my life. I said to my wife, do you believe this? I'm president. But I didn't know anybody in Washington. And I had to rely on people to give me names. And many were really good. I mean, Bob Lighthizer, I had great trade people. I had some great people. But I also picked people that, in retrospect, I wouldn't have picked. But now I know the smart ones, the dumb ones, the weak ones, the solid ones, the ones like you. I know the people. I know everybody, sort of like everybody. And we're going to have a great government. I didn't know. I had to rely on people I'd ask I don't want to use names because I don't want to embarrass. They're not bad people, but I'd ask people that were rhinos, who do you recommend for such and such a position? All important positions. And they'd recommend some people that were rhinos or something, or weak or not good. And I don't have to ask too much right now. I know the people, and I've known them through fighting and wars. I've known them through, because all this stuff. I had great support. Don't forget, I beat Nancy Pelosi. I beat all these people, every one of them. And somebody said, you know, if you look at it, he beat the Clinton family, right? And that was really Obama too, because he was behind her 100% like he was running. And I beat the Bush family. I beat everybody. And now I beat Biden. I got him out. I beat him twice, actually. I beat him the first time, but now I beat him a second time because it was the debate that got him out. And now I have to beat somebody that nobody ever heard of, who's a Marxist. And I think I'll be able to do that. But
Okay, like listen, you guys know me. I love to let a clip play through. I love to give people context. I was supposed to play like 30 seconds of each of this, but I've never heard him actually talk about that. I didn't know Sean Ryan was going to ask that question, particularly because Sean Ryan is CIA. Well, ex-CIA. You know, you guys know how I feel about that. So for him to say he doesn't trust anything, and Trump saying I don't trust it as well, and then to get into that conversation is wow. And also Trump to admit a mistake. You know, I love Trump, but, you know, you don't hear him admit mistakes. And you know, when he talks about not hiring the correct people. See, this is what I mean when it comes to an interview. This is Sean Ryan. And listen, Sean Ryan's no slouch. He's a great podcast. Absolutely amazing podcast. He sat down with some great people. In fact, if you wanted a podcast that seemed like Joe Rogan, really focused in on politics, Sean Ryan be a good bet. But, you know, the fact that he's ex-CIA, maybe some people don't trust that. I like it. But there you go. Great example of what I'm talking about. Who else has interviewed him? We all know about Tucker Carlson interviewing Trump, right?
It started with protests against you, massive protests, right. Organized protests by the left, and then it moved to impeachment twice,
right.
And now indictment. I mean, the next stage is violence. Are you worried that they're going to try and kill you? Why wouldn't they try and kill you, honestly?
They're savage animals. They are people that are sick, really sick. You have great people in the Democrat Party. You have great people that are Democrats. Most of the people in our country are fantastic, and I'm representing everybody. I'm not just Republicans or conservative. Right. I represent everybody. I'm the president of everybody. But I've seen what they do. I've seen the lengths that they go to.
It started with protests against.
Shocking Tucker Carlson prediction. And, you know, this is the thing with interviews. They stay in history. So when you see that interview and you're like, wow, Tucker Carlson was right. It's just, it speaks to, again, why wouldn't Joe Rogan have this interview? You know, Tucker Carlson is somebody who Joe Rogan considers a friend now. This is somebody who no one ever saw this happening. Theo Vaughn and Donald Trump actually sitting down together.
They were two great fighters. That fight was incredible. I think they had like many heart attacks that night, literally heart attacks in Madison Square Garden. I think it was Madison Square Garden. And the fight was so unbelievable. Two undefeated heavyweight champions of the world. There was no UFC and there was no competition, really. It was it.
Yeah.
That's Trump talking about fighting. You see the span just from 3 interviews, right? We went from deep government talk and what it's like to defeat people as a president to, you know, a prediction about assassination, to him just talking about fights. You know, Logan Paul, I don't even know if some of you older people don't even know who Logan Paul is. He was somebody who started out as a vlogger and just a straight up just YouTuber, just doing wild stuff. And he's built massive businesses. He's a fighter now, you know, whatever. He's in the WWE now, but also he decided to interview Trump.
About money in this country.
Go ahead.
I've had a very fortunate career.
Yeah.
I've made some money. And
more money than you ever thought possible?
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
Yeah, I know.
Absolutely.
I know the kind of money you make because I know when you have a top event and your shows, but these events are doing fantastically.
Yeah,
what you've done is incredible.
Yeah, I'm very blessed, and part of the reason that I believe I'm blessed is because of this country, and I think in a way I'm kind of living like the modern day American dream. You know, I had access to a phone and could start my business and reach the entire world on this device. So,
Excuse me, did you guys start like separately?
me and Jake?
Yes.
Nah, together.
Oh, you started together?
Together on YouTube.
And did you branch out? You each have your
Yeah,
own thing now?
well, eventually, because I went to college. Jake was still in high school. He ended up dropping out. I finished my first year.
It's an amazing 2 stories, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Who makes more money?
It depends on the year. It depends if Jake has
I want to
fights.
ask you a little question.
and it depends on when this sells right here.
Yeah.
So an example of another interview, and listen, I'm not even picking these clips I'm not doing this intentionally, but just to hear him say, you know, he's crediting America for all of this. And, you know, that's part of the reason, I think, why he's interviewing Trump, is because the one thing that you're seeing throughout all these interviews, from Sean Ryan to Tucker Carlson to Theo Vaughn, and yes, even Theo Vaughn, you know, anybody who takes in his content knows Theo's a really decent dude. And it seems like the one thing, and especially going to Tulsi now, they're all connected by one thing, and I'll mention it after this.
Me, hard to talk about sometimes. This is only the second time I've spoken about it publicly, but my husband and I were married almost 10 years ago. We wanted to start a family. We were very excited about it. Unfortunately, it was very difficult. We were not successful in trying to get pregnant. For us, IVF seemed to be the only option and the last resort. As you know, it's a pretty difficult process. It's very, very expensive. I was in Congress at the time, traveling. I would carry the medicine that I had to administer shots to myself sometimes in an airport bathroom. And ultimately, the most difficult part was every time going to the doctor for another transfer and hoping that it would result in a positive pregnancy test, and then being heartbroken over and over every time that test came back negative. Now, I know some of your opponents, your political opponents, are saying that you want to ban IVF. While it didn't work for us, it's worked for a lot of families. And I just know that there are women and couples in this crowd, or those who are watching here tonight, who may be going through this same struggle and are concerned about being able to have this option, either because they might not be able to afford it, or they're concerned that it just may not be available. And I'd love for you to talk to them about how they should feel.
Well, thank you very much, Tulsi. And I didn't know about your situation. And it's tough stuff, right? Tough. Life is pretty tough. It can be beautiful, but it can be difficult. We are doing something with IVF, because IVF, as you know, from friends and people you know, it's really worked out very well for a lot of people. It gave them a child when they would not have had a child. And I told my people I wanted to look at this a couple of weeks ago. And as you know, we have no taxes on a thing called tips. You know that? And I said, tell me, we did 3 things. We did that, and we did no tax for seniors on Social Security benefits. We want to have that. And I've been seeing a lot of IVF, and I kept hearing that I'm against it, and I'm actually very much for it. In fact, in Alabama, where a judge ruled against it, and I countered the judge and came out with a very strong statement for it. And the Alabama...
You were very quick in your response to that.
I was, but they were too. They were amazing. The legislature approved virtually my statement. I'm in full IVF, and it has really gone. It's terrific. And I said, so with the tips and with the Social Security, the no taxes on Social Security, I said maybe for IVF, and I've been looking at it, and what we're going to do is for people that are using IVF, which is fertilization, the government is going to pay for it, or we're going to get or mandate your insurance company to pay for it, which is going to be great. We're going to do that.
So they're like, I'm just saying, you know, Joe Rogan can humanize somebody. These are like, we're at 5 different interviews. Joe Rogan can humanize someone to this extent within one interview. He really could. You know, I know a lot of people downplay Joe, and you know, but he really could. But the one thing I was going to say, they're all connected through all these interviewers that you see is through America, through patriotism. they all have a love of country. You know, even Logan Paul is looking at things and going, I know I'm kind of in Hollywood and I should be left-leaning, but I'm going to interview Trump. I'm going to do that. I'm going to make sure to. Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong Democrat. I'm going to make sure to. Theo Vaughn could easily just be a comedian. Theo. But instead, Theo Vaughn is making an effort to actually sit down with Donald Trump. You know? Again, Theo's deep in Hollywood. And then again, the most recent one, Lex Fridman, sitting down with Donald Trump.
How do you think you'll do in the debate coming up?
Of course, that's how I listen to it, guys. I always know how to ruin a moment with high-speed conversation.
It's in a few days.
So I've done a lot of debating, only as a politician. I never debated. My first debate was the Rosie O'Donnell debate, right? The famous Rosie O'Donnell debate, the answer. But I've done well with debates. I mean, I became president. Then the second time, I got millions more votes than I got the first time. So I was told if I got 63 million, which is what I got the first time, you would win. You can't not win. And I got millions of more votes than that and lost by a whisker. And look what happened to the world with all of the wars and all of the problems. And look what happened with inflation, because inflation's just eating up our country, eating it up. So it's too bad. But there are a lot of things that could happen. We have to get those wars settled. We have to get, I'll tell you have to get Ukraine done. That could end up in a third world war. So could the Middle East.
So could the Middle East, is what he was about to say. Very true. But I just wanted to show, Lex Fridman is even talking with him. So Tulsi, very good friend of Joe Rogan. Tucker Carlson, Theo Vaughn, all these people are friends of Joe Rogan's. All of them, And then, of course, we all know Joe Rogan goes ahead and says this.
That's just what they do. That's politics. They do it on the left. They do it on the right. They gaslight you. They manipulate you. They promote narratives. And the only one who's not doing that is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
You a fan?
Yeah, I am a fan. Yeah, he's the only one that makes sense to me. He's the only one that he doesn't attack people. He attacks actions and ideas, but he's much more reasonable and intelligent. I mean, the guy was an environmental attorney and cleaned up the East River. I mean, he's a legitimate guy. That's just what they do.
And then what happens? Not even 2 weeks later, if that? What ends up happening?
He's highly respected. He is a great person. I've known him for so long. For the past 16 months, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
And then Robert F. Kennedy makes his way out and gets with Donald Trump, vows to start campaigning for Donald Trump because, in his own words, he understands what's at stake this election. And he understands that Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party and the way things are right in the Democrat Party and the way things are right now can't keep going on. So he sacrifices his own run of presidency. And he does it in such a strategic way as to pull away votes from Kamala and make sure not to pull votes away from Trump, but still stays on the ballot as an FU to the left that just pretty much bastardized him at every turn. It's just, and again, a good friend of Joe Rogan's. They've become good friends. So why is it that out of everybody, Joe Rogan is not interviewing Trump? What is actually going on with this whole thing? What's actually taking place? I don't get it. The only thing, and I'll bring up a theory I have at the end. There's one theory. If we put on our tinfoil Speedos and we get ready to play some 5D chess, there's only one thing I could really think of. But if he understands what's at stake when he sees Kamala Harris, if he understands what's at stake when he looks at what's going on in the country, he understands the border. I know he does. I report on his content every single day. I know he understands the border. I know he understands inflation. I know he understands the hints of Marxism and communism. I know he understands what could happen if they let certain people who have these values trickle in for 4 years and maybe 8 years and maybe 12 years. He knows where it can go. He knows what happens at the end of communism. He knows what happens at the infancy. And yet still, when presented with the idea of interviewing Trump, he just gets, I'm not going to say scared. He gets like he doesn't want to. It's very, very interesting. Here, let's play this clip first. They're just talking about the odds. But let's just play this because this is the key thing I wanted to show you guys. I'm sure everybody's seen this. I've heard people in the comments reference this to me so many times.
Man, Rob. Well, he don't want to say that because Rob's been going to the gym, so he doesn't want to be considered a white man.
That
Biden January 6th.
shakes hands with people that aren't even there when he gets off stage.
Yeah.
I think he's seeing ghosts.
Yeah.
Biden.
Did you see him on Jimmy Kimmel the other day?
No.
Well, he was just rambling. I mean, if he was anyone else, if he was a Republican, if that was Donald Trump doing that, every fucking talk show would be screaming for him to be off the air. And by the way, I'm not a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form. I've had the opportunity to have him on my show more than once. I've said no every time. I don't want to help him. I'm not interested in helping him.
The night is still young. We'll see.
If I have him on, the night is still young?
Yeah.
You think I'll have him on?
I think you'll have him on.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you think that? Because you'll have Putin on?
Hey, you're competitive as fuck. No.
You can pause it right there.
What's the date on that? Timestamp that.
This is...
Well,
this
that
is
came out
probably-
July 5th of 2022.
So that's
Exactly
a year
your-
ago.
So 2022, July, that came out. And that's him just saying, he doesn't want to help Trump. You guys heard it. And through this clip, they're just talking about the odds that Joe Rogan will actually interview Trump. And then this is July 11th. And then literally Patrick Bet-David is on about a month later. And he makes a plea to Joe Rogan. And you know what? I'm just going to play the plea for you guys.
But from your perspective, what's going on in America today, I would say if you don't do the podcast with him, you're helping the establishment and you're helping a guy named Joseph Biden. I think you're helping that person. That's kind of weird. But indirectly in your mind, you're helping Joseph Biden win by not interviewing Trump.
Did you come on this podcast specifically to try to get me to interview Trump?
No, you brought up Trump multiple times. I never brought it up.
It seems like you did.
He didn't. Joe Rogan actually brought up Trump a few times first, and then Patrick got into it. But as you can see, just from this clip, I'm not going to play the whole thing for you, but they were talking about the odds of Joe Rogan. He's been very curious about Joe Rogan interviewing Trump, but that was the one point that I wanted you guys to hear. I was skimming through a little bit, but you're indirectly helping Joe Biden, right? And obviously Joe Biden's gone now, and now it's like he's indirectly helping Kamala Harris. Now, I know that's a stretch for some people, but I don't feel like it is. I think all of these people, from Sean Ryan, from Tucker Carlson, from Theo Vaughn, to Logan Paul, to Tulsi, to Lex Fridman, to RFK Jr., I think they all understood that if they don't take the stances that we've all seen them take and do the interview that we've all seen them do with Trump, they understood that they were helping Kamala Harris indirectly. And they did not want to be a part of that. They wanted to be able to push Trump through, to humanize him, because that's what we need today. Now, Patrick Bet-David was wrong. It doesn't all just go through Trump, go through Joe. Trump has been doing all sorts of interviews. He does like 5 interviews a day, actually. JD Vance does like 10 interviews a day. They've been in the media like crazy. But Joe just has something else that just can't be made. But then Joe gets a little curious in regards to interviewing Trump when he starts thinking about what he could ask him.
So when you're having Trump on?
I don't know.
Okay. The look,
I don't know. Maybe.
Looks like you got something.
Maybe.
Okay, good. That's good. I think that's...
look, at a certain point in time, it's just like, it would be interesting to hear his perspective on a lot of things. I would like to know, what is it like when you actually get into office? I would like to know things like, what is it like versus perception?
Yeah.
What is it actually like when you get in that building? Like, what are you greeted with? When do you know that people are fucking with you? When do you know that the intelligence agency is lying to you? Like, when you decided to fire Comey, what was the thought? How much did you know? Like, what's the machine like? What is the deep state really like? Really like? Because we have all these, smoky room perceptions, like from the Bill Hicks joke, where they show you the Kennedy assassination from an angle you've never seen before. What is the machine that runs this country? Because it's very clear that it's not as simple as elected representatives that are doing the will of the people. It's not.
Very true. But see, there you go. Joe went from, in 1 year's time, or no, in 2 years' time, he went from absolutely not, I don't want to help him, to maybe, all the way to, and we'll play this first, all the way to this.
I would vote for Trump before I'd vote for Biden, just because I think with Biden, like, he's gone. Like, he's gone. You're going to be relying on his cabinet, and I knew his cabinet would be this fucking sideshow of diversity, and which is exactly what it is. You can't have those kind of people running a Ben and Jerry's. You certainly can't have those kind of people running the most powerful government the world's ever known. It's nuts. It's not. I would vote for Trump before I'd vote for Biden.
So he went from that within a 2-year span. This is 2024. He said this the beginning of March. He said this. So he went from, I do not want to help Trump, to when he's with Patrick Bet-David, he's saying maybe, to all of a sudden 2024, when things are getting real hairy, he's saying, I'm voting for Trump over Biden. 100%. And now we have Kamala Harris being installed right in front of our eyes. And all of a sudden, we're still at this point where Joe Rogan has not interviewed Trump. It just seems so odd to me. So I'm going to play these two things. Lex Fridman making his plea to Trump, and then Joe Rogan's last thoughts on interviewing Donald Trump. And because I've never heard him say this in this last clip that I'm going to play for you. But we'll go to Lex Fridman first.
Let me ask you about my good friend Joe Rogan. So you had a bit of tension with him. So when he said nice things about RFK Jr., I think you've said some not so nice things about Joe, and I think that was a bit unfair. And as a fan of Joe, I would love to see you do his podcast, because he is legit the greatest conversationalist in the world. So yeah. What's the story behind the tension?
I don't think there was any tension, and I've always liked him, but I don't know him. I mean, I only see him when I walk into the arena with Dana, and I shake his hand. I see him there, and I think he's good at what he does, but I don't know about doing his podcast. I mean, I guess I'd do it, but I haven't been asked, and I'm not asking them, I'm not asking anybody.
It sounds like a challenging negotiation situation.
No, it's not. It's not really a negotiation. And he's sort of a liberal guy, I guess, from what I understand. But he likes Kennedy. This was before, I found this out before Kennedy came in with us. He's going to be great. Bobby's going to be great. But I like that he likes Kennedy. I do too. He's a different kind of a guy, but he's got some great things going. And
so that's what it is. Lex Fridman wants to see Trump on Joe Rogan's podcast, because Lex Fridman understands that what Lex does is not what Joe Rogan does. What Tulsi did is not what Joe Rogan does. What RFK, what Logan Paul, Theo Vaughn, Tucker Carlson, Sean Ryan, what they do with Donald Trump is not what Joe can do with Donald Trump. He can do more. It's just, it's been proven, So I'm going to play this last clip, and then I'm just going to get into the two theories that I have on why Joe Rogan has not interviewed Donald Trump. Please put on your tinfoil Speedo, your tinfoil onesie, your tinfoil hats. Put on whatever you got, socks, whatever you got that's tinfoil, put it on, because we're going deep on that one, okay? A little 5D chess.
Been a whole thing where 100 people at least have texted me and sent me emails and contacted friends because they heard Trump was coming on my podcast. And the source of it is a fake Trump account on Twitter. Oh, God. It said, I'm going on the Joe... It's a Trump's face, and it's a fake account that said, I'm going on the Joe Rogan podcast soon. And I think it came out of the fact that Trump was on the Nelk Boys podcast, and then YouTube removed that podcast. They pulled the podcast, which is, that's one of the craziest things you could do, because then everyone's going to talk about how YouTube removed that podcast. Like, you can't even have Trump talk.
Right. Right. Well,
the former president of the United States, you can't let him talk?
somebody did send me, apparently not, but somebody did send me a note saying that he was going to be on your show.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I thought,
I've got
not really sure
original-
if that's the case.
It's not the case.
Yeah, I know.
I'll send you the look. I have decided that I am very apolitical when it comes to the future and like in political candidates. I don't want to have that kind of an influence, and I want to be someone who can watch and observe. I don't want to be someone who's actually affecting this.
So there you have it. He wants to stay neutral. He doesn't want to affect this. I understand that completely. And in a way, I don't understand it because, I don't have that type of influence. But I could understand wanting to minus yourself from things like this because it could get real bad for you. It could be Spotify coming down on him, family, friends. It could affect his turnouts in his comedy shows. It could affect so many different things for him. Money, future money, who knows? I know he has all the money someone could want, but maybe there's a certain number he wants to hit. Maybe he wants to pass away as a billionaire. We don't know. And that's up to him. But also when I think of it and I think of what's at stake, and you look at Kamala Harris and you look at her being installed, you look at the Soros money that's being injected to her, you look at all the manufactured hype, the media industrial complex, and then to think, I don't want to have any effect on that. I find that myself to be a little crazy because of course you would want to have an effect on that. Wouldn't you? Would you just want to sit back and just see what happens? Or would you actually want to make sure that that person who clearly shouldn't be in power is not in power? Now, obviously, there's the aspect of maybe he wants that person in power, but I've listened to too many clips of Joe Rogan. I know he does not like Kamala Harris. He said far more positive things, 5 to 10 times more positive things about Trump than he has about Kamala Harris. I know that for a fact. I watch the show constantly. So we'll get into the theories really quick. Here's the first one. It's a very simple one. Maybe he's a socialist. He's had Andrew Yang on the podcast, and Andrew Yang is just gross nowadays. Just gross. He's had Andrew Yang on again to have a debate with somebody. I think it was about universal basic income, something of that nature. I forget who he was debating. Might have been Brett Weinstein, might have been Jordan Peterson. I'm not 100% sure. But then he has Bernie on, says he's going to vote for Bernie. Confirm Bernie, bro. Maybe he just likes socialism. Maybe he thinks that is a good way for things to go in the country. That is possible, okay? That's not where you needed the tinfoil. I hope you put it on. The place where you need the tinfoil is, there's been so many people who always talk about controlled opposition, right? And more so in the community, because I'm a part of the JRE fan base just like everybody else. I'm in the comment section. I'm just the ultimate fan. This is my comment section, for Joe Rogan. Maybe Trump actually pissed off the agencies quite a bit, if you know what I mean. Those agencies, those departments, those bureaus. Trump really pissed them off. They really, really don't like Trump. And there's always been a certain section of fan, a certain percentage of fan that is like, Joe is involved with those agencies. And I always say, no, you guys are crazy. I spoke to Eddie Bravo. Eddie Bravo confirmed. He's like, Joe is not a part of anything like that. But I'll still just put it out there really quick. That is the only thing I can see stopping him from interviewing Trump, is that he's getting a little note, a little nudge, a little, hey, don't go that far. You can go pandemic lengths. You can interview those doctors, but don't go to that length. Don't make it a landslide victory for this guy. That's all I can think of. Because when you look at what could possibly happen with 8 years of Kamala, it doesn't matter how much money you have unless you're going to leave the country. It's going to be a bad time for everybody. You know what I mean? And then depending on what happens from there, get someone else who's just as liberal as her, if not worse. You know what I mean? It could be a bad 12 years for America if she gets in power, possibly, right? So money can't be the factor. Shows, all these things. Maybe it's just me and I'm just projecting, because I would put the country and the state of the country before all of that stuff. I mean, I kind of have already. I mean, this is not, you know what I mean? I'm not making millions of dollars doing this. And, you know, people don't like when you walk down the street wearing this. And people don't like someone who's black and says that black people aren't oppressed and is very conservative and out there and wants a traditional family and homeschooling and all this stuff. People don't like it all that much. So I've put that forth in front of everybody because I think if more people did that and if the nation worked towards being like that, things would be better. So maybe I'm just projecting. I don't know. But what do you guys think? What do you think the reason is that Joe Rogan has not interviewed Trump? Those are my reasons. I'm showing you. It's just hard to wrap my head around. He has a lot of friends who have interviewed him. All of these people he appreciates, loves, and respects, and yet still is not interviewing Trump. I don't get it. And it's sad to see, and I wish it would change. And I will put this out there, although I just said all this. I think he will interview Trump. I think it will come soon. I don't think it'll be before the election. It might be after the election. But I think he will sit down with Donald Trump. I just wish it was sooner than later. Because when your nation needs help, you're supposed to step in. You're supposed to step up. But that's just me. Anyways, guys, like, subscribe, turn on the notifications. It helps us tremendously. Other than that, I'm out.